So it's a new year and time for a new camera. I recently got the Panasonic G90, which is quite a nice camera and excellent value here in my country at least. Got them very cheap, but I feel they have some shortcomings that I hope these Sony can at least solve for me. Not only do I want a lens that can go even further than the 60mm that came with my G90, but don't really want to invest in Micro Four Thirds lenses, especially when the camera is, or at least some issues I have with the camera, so I'm not 100% satisfied, and I feel like Micro Four Thirds is kind of a dying platform. So anyways, that leads me to the Sony a6400. I've heard so many great things about the autofocus system on this one here. That's the one issue I have with my G90, especially when I'm filming myself. Doesn't really keep on my face, or not that reliable. And Sony here should have the best one in class. And the a6400 shouldn't have the overheating issues as the 6300 and I believe other models before as well. And also comes with the kit lens with 100 or 18 to 135mm kit lens, which is just giving me around 80mm further reach compared to the 60mm I have on my Micro Four Thirds system, which is kind of nice for this kind of overhead things I am doing here. So yeah, couldn't resist getting two of these, one for my overhead setup and one as a web camera and a A-roll camera to mount behind my monitor. But anyways, let's see what we get here. We get a 1 year extended warranty if you go and register at Sony, of course, on their website. And you also get a €100 coupon for, I believe, up to 2 lenses per camera. If again you buy from Sony directly, and only a few lenses are really included in the coupon here. So yeah, I'm not really going to invest in lenses just yet. I want to make sure I have a camera system that I really like. But Sony E-mount is definitely a great investment because you can use them on or buy full frame lenses for this crop sensor and use them on here as well as on the full frame E-mount cameras. But yeah, what you get is of course safety instructions and warranty information, and you also get a little quick start instruction here. You do not get a full size manual. You have to go to Sony's website to get a hold of their full-fledged manual. I kind of like this. It'll save some paper and also makes the manual updatable, so it's always up to date with newer firmware releases and such. You get a rather nice shoulder strap here. Actually, one of the better ones I have got included with at least the kind of cameras I buy. I buy prosumer cameras primarily, but yeah, I like this nylon on the outside and also have some rubber on the inside, so it will stay on your shoulder. So quite nice, and not really something I'm going to use. Like I said, I'm going to mount this on my rig here at home. You also get a micro USB cable. You do not get an external charger. You need to charge the batteries into the camera with the micro USB cable here, or whatever kind of micro USB you have. You also get this little cover for the eyepiece. So of course for the eyepiece on the camera, I'm not going to use that. And also a little charger here, rather small little charger. And it is a 5V, 1.5 amps, 7.5 watt charger. I believe you can actually use up to 15 watt with this camera. Correct me if I am wrong. And you can also power the camera through the USB. So that's quite a nice, nifty little feature there. But you still need the battery inside. And speaking of the battery, just have this rather small battery, which many people have complained about. I'm going to, or I have already ordered some dummy batteries I'm going to use in mine because I do not plan to move it around. It's just a permanently attached camera here to my overhead rig and my A-roll and web camera rig. But yeah, also gets, of course, some power cables for the European and UK market. Of course, I live in Europe, so that's what I get. But of course, if you live other parts of the world, you will get other cables. If you live in America, of course, you will have an American plug in there. And of course, just plug it into the other side of the little power brick, and then you can start charging or power your camera. So that's quite nice. I actually prefer this over external power bricks or power adapters, or excuse me, power chargers. To charge internally into the camera is quite convenient. And of course, you also get a little lens hood here with some Sony branding. And of course the model number below here, it's a nice thing. I always keep them on my lenses because they do protect them a little bit. If I bump them into things, I don't really have any use for it here. I can control the lighting in my little home studio. And of course the lens itself, 18 to 135 millimeters. Of course this is a crop sensor, so you have to time that by 1.5. And as well, if you are recording at 30 FPS, there is a 1.2 times crop on top of that as well. So that will get me quite a further reach than what I'm used to with my 60 millimeter, and even with my crop in 4K recording on my Panasonic camera. This one should get at least 80 millimeters more reach. And of course it is an E-mount lens. It's made of plastic, but it actually feels better than I would have expected for such a lens here. It feels like high quality. It feels like very durable, but I believe it's not weather sealed. So that's of course one downside to this lens here. They could have done that, I think, even though it is a kit lens. Panasonic do that with their 12 to 60 kit lens. Should be rather sharp, at least according to the reviews I've seen online. And of course it does have a 55 millimeter of thread on there, so you can put ND filters and whatever you would like. And it's a variable aperture, so 3.5 to 5.6, and it is optically stabilized lens, which is rather nice because of course this camera doesn't have any in-body image stabilization, so the lens stabilization is all you get. And of course the E-mount here in the other end, just screw it into your camera and until you hear a little click there, and you should be good to go. The E-mount is very versatile. You can also use this on a full frame camera, but of course wouldn't work properly, but it is an option. And of course you can use full frame lenses on the APS-C size cameras. And yeah, the lens hood on there looks quite nice, I would say. And it is a rather big lens, considering this is a relatively small camera. So yeah, let's have a look at the camera here. 6400 4K recording. I hope this won't have the overheating issues as the previous models. A lot of YouTubers says it doesn't have it, but let's just test it out. And of course, all of the buttons here on the back doesn't really have that many buttons, but I think it is fine for what kind of camera this is. This is a very compact APS-C size camera. I believe one of the more compact ones out there, which is one of Sony's specialties, of course. A little pop-up flash there. I don't really like flash, so I'm not going to use that, but it is nice that you can just tuck it away and don't even think about it. And of course you have the hot shoe up there and the mode dial. And of course let's just put it onto the video. And you also have a little scroll wheel there to control whatever kind of settings you have set it to in the camera, and a little custom button and power, of course, on off. So does have quite a few options of customizable buttons, and also the record button, the little awkward position for video recording. And yeah, NFC here on the side, and overall the camera feels quite sturdy and well put together. Also have a little infrared sensor there, and of course the E-mount here in the front, and also a little autofocus light, or a little helping light there under the Sony logo. So the E-mount here and the APS-C size sensor below. I really wish that Sony would implement the curtain on the sensor, so it will just protect it a little bit. The shutter could just go in front of the sensor when the camera is off. But yeah, maybe in the future they will implement something like that. And of course, let's mount the lens here. Just make sure the little white dot is lined up with the little white dot here on the lens itself, and just squeeze it in place or turn it in place like so until it clicks in place and it's well secured like so. And let's have a look around the camera here further. And of course on the left side we have this little flap here with micro HDMI out. Would have been nice with a full size HDMI, but a little much to ask for. And of course the micro USB charging port, as well as a microphone in. No line level in, only mic in. And a little speaker there as well. And of course underneath you have a thread for mounting it to a tripod or what kind of head or rig or whatever. And it is centered according to the lens. And of course a little battery door there, which also holds the SD card. Not really a big fan of that, but I'm not really going to use the SD card. I'm going to record externally with this camera here into an external recorder, either from Atomos Ninja 5, or I have some video assist from Blackmagic on the way, or I have pre-ordered them at least. They are not in stock right now, so should be here soon. But in terms of ergonomic, not really my favorite camera. The grip is just so small. I have rather large hands, and I need to put my ring finger underneath the camera to get a decent grip, at least with one hand. But of course, you can just use the second hand, of course, to hold on to the lens and balance it better that way. But this is the best way I can grip the camera. Yeah, it's not really something I would want to run around and shoot with. So yeah, for ergonomic, if you are a photo shooter, definitely not my cup of tea. But like I said, I'm just going to mount it here as my overhead camera and also as my web/A-roll camera. So I don't really care about ergonomics. And the little tilting screen there, rather nice. I prefer this one over the one that tilts out to the side, because the one that tilts out to the side actually covers the ports on the side. So if you have HDMI cables, microphones, and charging cable or whatever connected, it will just block the monitor. But this one doesn't. It does stick out a little bit to the back, so just make sure you have room for it. But other than that, only the hot shoe there will cover the screen. But there are workarounds for that if you want to use a microphone or whatever and film yourself at the same time. For all the vloggers out there, I have attached the battery, but there is no charge right out of the box, which is a little unfortunate, I think. So let's get the little power adapter there a go, and of course unzip the ties there, or unzip the wires, and of course plug it in. And you can see here it starts charging immediately. It charges when the camera is off. As soon as you turn on the camera, it will use the power to drive the camera, and also use a little bit of battery power, but not really that much. And of course, when you turn it on, you are met with the setup process there of selecting your language, area where you live, of course time code, and of course set the date and time and whether it is summertime or not. And this is of course rather standard of all cameras, I believe, have this little setup process. So the 24th of March is when I got this camera, and of course 2021. And so just set time and date and set what kind of format you want it in. And play memories, you can of course download the little app, and I believe you can use this to look at the screen and transfer photos and such. I'm not going to use that personally. Let's get into the settings here and see if we can find where the version number is on the camera. I believe firmware version 2.0 is the latest one. Let's just see if this camera comes included with that. And yeah, I haven't really looked into the manual, so just bear with me after I just search for whatever kind of function I want. But it does come pre-installed with version 2 firmware on the body, and the lens has version 0.1, and it is the latest, both of them as of this date. Let's just put the, of course, mode dial there to video. And first thing I want to do is, if I can find it, go in and set it to NTSC, so I can actually record in 30 FPS, which is what I am probably going to record with this one. I know you get full sensor readout at 24 or up to 25 frames per second, the Super 35, but at 30 FPS you do get a 1.2 times crop, but that's still around 5K. That is downstable to 4K, so it's better than the crop I have on 1.25 crop I have right now on my Micro Four Thirds camera. And let's just, of course, remove my Micro Four Thirds camera here, my G90, my webcam, A-roll cam, whatever you want to call it. And this is the one I'm going to replace, and that's what I've been talking about. Very annoying. That big flap there just covers the screen, and when I have an HDMI cable, I cannot really deselect if I have selected other focus points on the monitor or on the screen there. It's very annoying because the little plug is in the way, and this big flap there just dangling on front of the screen, covering some parts of it. And let's remove the bracket there and pretty much just install it onto the Sony camera. Not really much going on there, but this is a V bracket, I believe it's called. So I have my web camera mounted on the side there, and I have my camera, of course, mounted there on the middle, and it is wall mounted into another bracket on top of a ball head, or from a bracket to ball head to the camera there. And you can see it does look quite nice in my opinion, and the flip up screen there is definitely much more usable for the type of stuff I do the cables on the side that doesn't cover the screen anymore, which is just excellent. And it does take up a little less space than my G90, at least in terms of the camera itself. The lens is protruding a little bit more. So like this setup, very nice. And of course my web camera there on the right side. And I plan to have my recorder on the left side. Right now I just have a monitor next to it. So this is my current setup. And I'm just going to tweak it a little bit, of course, and make sure everything is all right. And I'm very curious to try out the autofocus, which should be very, very good, especially compared to Panasonic. And my overhead camera here is mounted as well. And you can see it is also wall mounted to some of these pipes there. I've made this little bracket myself and just some clamps on there. And I have the little V bracket or L bracket, I believe they're called, on there as well. So I can at least adjust the height of the camera. And the bigger lens there does give me further reach, so I can get closer in on whatever kind of stuff I am doing, like fixing things and assembling things. I want to get in real close there. And actually the lens also protrude a little bit more, which is actually quite nice, so I can easier actually get access to it and zoom in and zoom out with the zoom ring there. So does work quite well with the already installed brackets there that I had used for, what is it, 2-3 years? Close to 3 years now, this setup here, and of course all my LED lights next to it. So this is coming straight from the Sony a6400. I did record this in S-Log 3 with Cine D, I believe, as well. The picture profile 8, the standard one. And I did apply a lot, just one of the lots that I found inside of the DaVinci Resolve. So it's not perfect. It's a little, not the highest contrast level. But anyways, quite happy with it. Although I ended up going back to just a standard profile in terms of photo or picture quality. I found that S-Log actually messed up the autofocus unless you were really overexposing the image quite heavily, or at least had it well exposed. Otherwise the autofocus system just wouldn't work on the a6400. But anyways, this is the camera I'm going to replace. I had some issues with this camera recording internally. Sometimes they will brick. It will happen to both of my G90s, and I will lose all the recording. The camera just froze up on me, and I had to actually remove the battery completely and reinsert it again into the camera for it to boot up again. And that happened on several occasions, and there wasn't really any pattern to it. Sometimes it happened after short recording time, or other times it happens after longer recording time, and that's kind of a bummer. But of course I have moved my recordings externally. I record into a Ninja 5 now, and I plan to do that in the future as well. But the 60mm lens here just didn't have enough reach, and like I said, I don't really feel comfortable investing in some relatively expensive glass for a Micro Four Thirds system, because Micro Four Thirds I think is kind of a dying system. And do we see any more cameras from Panasonic? I'm not really sure. Micro Four Thirds sensor and Olympus, not really, because they are not really selling that much cameras anymore. So I would rather just, if I want to invest in some glass in the future, I would rather invest in the E-mount system, because you can use them both with the full frame and the APS-C crop sensor camera, and there are just so much more options, excuse me, out there in terms of getting great and very nice cameras from Sony. So still gonna keep these G90 cameras. I'm gonna use them as a B-roll camera and just walking around shooting photos with these cameras. I believe the contrast detect autofocus system from Panasonic is a fantastic system if you are just out shooting photos, and also in lower lighting conditions. It just works so much better than a lot of other autofocus systems I've tried. But in terms of filming yourself, having a reliable focus on your face, even though with face and eye tracking on this camera, I found it just to not be reliable. It had the little box around my face and still it wasn't in focus. So anyways, let's just run some tests here on the Panasonic G90, trying to replicate the kind of issues I've had. You can see here the face tracking mechanism is definitely on my face and even on my eyes as well, but it still just pulses back and forward from my face and going in and out of focus. Not really as bad here as it can be. Sometimes I've recorded quite a long time and actually my face has been completely out of focus, even though the face tracking there should be on, at least the boxes around my face. Right now it's actually doing quite a nice job, and you can of course see all the settings here. I am at a 50 shutter and a f-stop of 3.8 and ISO 500. It does of course also have the little pulsing there in the background, but I feel like the Sony also kind of have that as well. But you can see it's not really as confident going back to my face, and sometimes it just doesn't go back to my face. Like I said, this test here is actually one of the better ones I have at least done, and also the little face box there goes away after some time, which is also a little annoying, so I can't really continue to see if I'm in focus. But anyways, here on the Sony a6400, this is just the first setup. I have S-Log turned on and Cine Light D, I believe it's called, the picture profile 8, and you can see here the focus system just doesn't work. Around the same settings as on my Panasonic camera, so it is at f4, the shutter is at 50, and also I'm recording externally and ISO is set to 500, and I have applied a lot in recording here, recording into OBS, but the focus system, I believe, seemed to not really be that reliable, at least on first. I was really disappointed with it, but then I googled of course a little bit online and found that actually if you're running those Cine Light D, I mean S-Log and all of the other gammas there, you have to actually keep the frame relatively overexposed. So I just gave up on running S-Log, at least for now. So this is just a standard picture profile, no editing or anything done. Actually, I think it's quite nice, and same settings. So ISO 500 and the aperture is set to 5, and also the shutter is set to 50. But you can see here, it just stays on my face pretty much consistently. Like I said, I'm recording externally, and I have disabled internal recording, so it does track my face and still recording into this one here is OBS. And you can see when I put some things in front of me, which is something I want to do in the future, showing off some product or talking about some product, I want to focus back and forth between that and my face, and it just snaps on instantly to my face. So that's very nice. Does have some pulsing in the background still, something that Panasonic gets a lot of dirt for, or people just complain a lot about that on Panasonic cameras. I'm not sure if this kit lens that has this issue here, but in terms of just focusing back and forth between my face and some subject here, or object here in the front, definitely very nice, and it just stays on my face even though it pulses a little bit in the background. It still seems to be in focus on my eyes, at least still seem to be focused. So that's quite nice, and much better and more reliable than my Panasonic. Just be aware if you're shooting in any of those logging profiles. But in terms of overheating, sadly I have to say I have experienced overheating. This is also very relatively extreme test I did here. Small room, I have both my PCs turned on, all my LED lights turned up to 100%. I turned up the heating to the maximum, or 25 degrees here in the room, and the sun was coming in through the window, so around 26-28 degrees internal temperature, and I did get the temperature overheating here, and that's a little unfortunate. This is set to high, or turn off to be at high, so it will only turn off if the temperature is over at certain degrees, and also with the image stabilization turned off, or the sensor stabilization turned off, which is recommended. Also with power plugged in through micro USB, so I don't know if it would be better with dummy batteries, but that's a little concerning, and I definitely have to do some more testings with this one. I didn't think overheating would be an issue when I record externally, so all I have done here is externally from this camera here. But maybe with a dummy battery it will be better. But for now I am very happy with that autofocus, man. It just snaps on and it just stays there and switches between subjects I have in frame and me back to my face there. And yeah, that's pretty much what a one-man YouTuber like me really want, because you can really rely on Panasonic focusing system. It's not really as bad as people make it out to be. It is pretty good, but it's just not reliable 100% of the time. So it's like 70% hit rate. And even though the little frame there is around your face, you can really be 100% sure it is in focus. And when I'm talking or doing gaming or whatever, and I record myself, I don't really look up to the little monitor all the time and check if I actually am in focus. I'm busy, of course, talking and looking into the lens of the camera. So just need something to be very stable and just stay on my face. And I definitely feel like Sony is it's a little higher investment than the Panasonic camera. Like my two Panasonic camera cost as much as one of the Sony a6400 with the kit lens. So it is twice as expensive, but I feel like it's worth it if I don't run into any overheating issues just running my setup here. It can get a little warm inside my little office / gaming / studio / recording office here or studio. When I'm gaming, of course, I want to use the camera to film myself like a web camera, and same time also film the screen on my computer. So for those scenarios, a lot of heat is pumped into the room, as well as the sun does have a tendency to get quite hot or shine through the windows here. I live relatively high in an apartment complex, so the sun does shine in here and does get relatively hot during the afternoon. So I'm interested to see in normal environment here if actually I will run into overheating issues. So yeah, only testing will tell. But so far I'm very happy. Definitely highly recommend the a6400. Great value camera, and if you don't need in-body image stabilization, I think it's a better buy than the a6600, in my opinion at least. Of course, I will share some affiliate link down in the description below if you are interested. Else, I hope to see you again in a future video. But that's been it for this one. Take care.